Now 6:16, 17, and we're going to start this meeting. It is now 7:17, and we're going to start this meeting this evening. The City of Castle Hills will convene into special session on October the 4th, 2018 at 7:17 in the City of Castle Hills Chambers, 209 Lemonwood, Castle Hills, Texas. We'll see if the quorum is here. A quorum is here. Mr. Pinkston.
Yes, sir. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, we want to thank you for all the people who are gathered here, citizens who are gathered here to express just interest in their city, their government, and their community. And I just ask that tonight you would just give favor and wisdom and your mind, Lord, to our leaders, our elected leaders, this council, and that there would just be a real sense of just being led in the right direction. I thank you for all of the great things that took place out last night on the Night Out in America, all around, all 16 of those amazing events where people across the community opened up their homes to just let their neighbors enjoy each other's company and just the fellowship that we enjoy here in this community. I pray your hand would rest on this city, and we thank you for this evening in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Pinkston. All right. Pledge of Allegiance, John Squire.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, John. All right. We'll open up this meeting with new business. Follow the protocol that we always have on new business, which is 1, the discussion and possible action on adoption of the evaluation process and evaluation form for the evaluation of the city manager.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to move to go into executive session on a personnel item that pertains to the evaluation that cannot be discussed in open session because it involves other personnel.
Point of order.
Yes.
It's item number 2 on the agenda.
Okay.
Yes, but it's important to do that beforehand.
Mr. Rapley, you have the
To go out
choice, I
of
believe.
order.
Mr. Rapley has a choice to either hear this in person or in executive session.
Point of order. That's
Yes.
number 2 on the agenda.
Doesn't
We have
matter.
number 1 on the agenda, has nothing to do with personnel.
Point of order taken. Thank you, Ms. Winger.
I'm moving to change the order.
Paul,
What is the question?
into executive session regarding this item that has to do with the city manager.
So if the question is, do you want to go into executive session to seek legal advice from counsel under 071, then we can all do that and get legal advice relating
Okay.
to a matter on the agenda. If you want to go into executive session under 074 personnel matters, the person who is subject to that personnel matter has an option to have the matter held in open session
understand. I
or in closed session. So just for clarification, I'm trying to ascertain.
Yeah, I understand that
basis
he
for the
has
closed
that
session.
right, and I'm not intending to violate that in any way, but one of the items that we have to discuss, that we've put off discussing, has to do with other personnel as it relates to him.
Point of order.
And we cannot discuss
Yes.
that in an
Point
open
of order.
session.
That
Please,
has
Leslie.
nothing to do with anything. That was the only issue regarding employment that was noticed for tonight is an evaluation of Mr. Rapley, the city manager. There's no other employee that is subject to tonight's meeting.
But this has to do with his evaluation. So
If it has
yes,
to
if
do
we
with
can
Mr.
go
Rapley
into,
at all,
if we
Mr.
can go
Rapley, would
into
you like
executive
to
session to get your
have this in
opinion.
public or in private?
One item.
Because it does have to do with you, sir.
Mayor, I'd prefer to have it out in the open.
Thank you very much.
I request then that we go into executive session for your counsel on this.
It has to do with Mr. Rapley, and can I overrule that?
Well, if we go in executive session, I can give you all legal advice. If you want to discuss personnel matters, then we won't be talking about anything. We'll come
Who
back
is going
out.
to rule whether or not that conversation goes into personnel matters? Can we have another attorney in there, please? Also with you?
Why? We don't.
I want it, that's why. And I'm running this meeting, Ms. Winger.
Well, wait a minute.
In case you didn't know.
You've never
Point of
allowed
order.
other
I'm
attorneys
running
in.
this meeting, Ms. Winger.
You've never allowed other attorneys in before.
I don't care. I am running this meeting, Ms. Winger. Is that
Another-
understood?
It is, but you can't change the
I
rules.
can do anything I want.
Oh, no,
I
you
am
cannot.
running this
You
meeting,
cannot
Ms.
change
Winger.
the rules.
If there's another attorney in the meeting, it would be an attorney with the firm that you've retained, and that would be Mr.
Where is
Schnall.
Mark?
He'll be here shortly.
Well, then we'll wait for Mark. Thank you.
Take a recess?
Yes. Until Mark gets here.
Time? And perhaps how long?
We're taking a recess at 7:19 to wait for another attorney to go into a meeting, which Ms. Winger has called.
It has everything to do with Mr. Rapp.
Okay. Paul, she just admitted it has everything to do with Mr. Rapley, so we cannot go into executive session.
Just to make it clear, you can get legal advice if it is discussion, deliberation on an evaluation, reassignment on a personnel matter on item 2. The option to go into closed session on that is up to the person who is subject of that item, which would be the city manager in this case.
And he
So
can-
without knowing the question, I can't tell you the answer.
Well, we'll wait till Mark gets here. Thank you. Question of whether or not we can or not, based on the fact that it is a conversation about,
Can you restate that we're back in session because the volume was off?
we're called back in session at 7:26. Go
I
ahead.
call for an adherence to the agenda.
Call for what?
An adherence to the agenda.
I second that.
Okay?
Well, I think there was a motion that Councilwoman Winger made, and there was a second. I don't know that there was a vote on that. or was withdrawn.
A vote on what, sir?
I believe the motion that is on the floor currently is to rearrange the order of the agenda to call item 2 first.
No, Ms. Winger had the motion to go into executive session, and we're waiting to find out whether or not that can be done, because she said that it was to talk about Mr. Rapley.
She did also ask for 2 to be heard first,
She asked for what?
for the second item to be heard first. That's true. Did you rule on that? Did you say no?
No, I didn't hear that.
Maybe the
Look,
city
we had
secretary.
one motion and we have a second on the table. You can't have another motion and a second on the table on another item. So does she withdraw her motion as far as the first item is concerned?
The first motion that I heard was to rearrange,
To change the order.
to change the order of the agenda.
I didn't know what I heard.
Ma-
Would you please run the tape back again? What I heard is she wanted to go into executive session to talk about item 1.
Mayor Howell, she did ask to request executive session, and Alderwoman McLean called a point of order.
Right.
And Ms. Winger followed with a motion to change the order, seconded by Mr. Gregory.
Okay, well, I was mistaken. Okay, let's reverse order. Didn't you say that the first would override the second based on your point of order or not?
But you have to take a vote on it. We haven't taken a vote.
You
Leslie,
can,
I'm well aware of what we have to do, okay? Please. Keep your mouth shut. Okay. Did you make a motion after that?
But it's not valid. There's a motion on the table. It hasn't been voted.
Okay, let's make a motion to move item 2 to, would you read back the motion, please, Minnie?
Yes, Mayor, it was to, Mayor Pro Tem Winger requested to change the order, and
What was the first motion about executive session?
that wasn't seconded. She requested to go into executive session, but she motioned after Ms. McLean's point of order to change the order of the agenda item, seconded by Mr. Gregory.
Okay. All in favor?
discussion perhaps?
What, Mayor? I'm sorry.
Well, we gotta have, oh, okay. Well, we gotta have to go into discussion, so go ahead. I thought we had to vote on the fact whether or not we were gonna bring 2 to 1.
Yeah, but
To change the order.
Folks, you cannot go into discussion without the motion being on the table.
It is, and it was seconded.
It is seconded, but that was to move the thing forward. It was not to move on the second item.
The discussion is about whether to change the order.
No. The discussion was to move on the change of order of the 2 things. That's right. You have to vote on that, whether or not we're going to do that or not.
But we'd like to discuss it first before we vote.
We've never done that before. We've never done a thing and then a discussion on. Go ahead. Skip?
Nothing to add.
Scott?
I don't think it makes sense to change the order, because how can we deliberate on the employment evaluation, et cetera, if we have no metric to our evaluation process in place? So first, we need to discuss and have possible action to adopt an evaluation process before we can have an evaluation. So to reverse the order of business does not make sense. First, we need a metric, or discuss some possible metric before we actually discuss a possible evaluation. So I do not think we need to change the order. We need to stay 1 and then 2.
Amy?
I agree with Mrs. Scott, and I'd further add that we're dealing with a situation where there's no requirement for an evaluation. It has always bothered me that there was no metric or rules, that we were asking someone to come into basically an open forum with no rules and no idea of what to expect. In a proper city, we would have adopted a policy and process for evaluating our city manager. And I agree with Mrs. Scott that they should stay in the order on the agenda.
Ms. Winger?
Well, having done this several times, there is no requirement that we use a forum. So nobody has to use a form. You can use a form if you like, but the fact of the matter is that the evaluation comes first, and the method of determining it comes later, not the other way around.
Did you have something to say?
Mr. Gregory, and then I have one more comment, please.
Okay, Mr. Gregory?
We've spent 20 minutes, we've spent 20 minutes deciding to whether to do 2 or 1 first. If somebody had wanted to do it, I remember I asked you to move an item on an agenda. It was 15th or 14th or 12th, and I asked you to put it first. You did it. It was done. Let's not waste more time. I think
We're
if
talking
somebody,
about-
if somebody wants it switched, just switch it. There are only
Since
2
you're,
items.
hang on. Since you're addressing me, Douglas, I'll answer that. First of all, we have never done an evaluation of a city manager.
Yes,
Why
we
are you
have.
looking at me like that?
Yes, we have. I've sat,
Who?
I've- I've sat in 2.
Who?
Well, you had one with Mr. Reitz, and you had one with Mr. Vanderwally.
And Diane File.
There were 2 of them.
Diane didn't get one.
Written,
No, she didn't.
you had written things like this. You had one for Mr. Reitz, of which this was Mayor Smiley.
If it was an
who put
evaluation, what it was an evaluation with a form that Bruce Smiley came up, and y'all fought it like crazy.
No, he brought it.
Because it was, and we fought on that for about 30 minutes,
No,
is
we-
what
if
we
you-
did.
you recall-
And then I recall very well.
We were in executive session. Mr. Smiley handed it out. We filled it out. We discussed it, and we handed it back to him at the close of the session. With Mr. Vanderwally came forth with the form, and he handed it out, and we filled it out, and we discussed it, all in closed session. So there are at least 2 examples of where we had forms. Now, there are other examples where we did not have forms. We did not have forms with Dr. Steele, when a previous mayor just simply called him in and said, "I've got the votes, you're out." We didn't have forms there, he was just gone.
What about Mr. Shands?
Mr.
What about
Shands-
Diane File?
Mr. Shands retired.
What about the other 8 that we've had here?
I'm letting you know, Mr. Shands retired.
I'm yelling from the
Mr.
audience.
Mr. Shands retired. To the best of my knowledge, he never had an evaluation. I told you about Mr. Reitz.
Hang on.
I wrote all these people down. Mr. Blackstone, he just didn't show up. He was constantly absent. We discussed Mr. Steele, Rita Hoyle. I can't remember whether we had an evaluation with her or not. Diane File, we had an evaluation of her, but it was not on paper. And we discussed what to pay and this, that, and the other.
Mine was on paper.
And Mr. Vanderwally and Mr. Rapley, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I may have left out one person, but it's really whatever the council wants to do.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I find it absolutely ludicrous that Ms. Wenger and Mr. Gregory asked for a business plan for a passport office, passport acceptance, for our employees to put together a business plan, and you don't find it appropriate to have a proper procedure in place and process in place for evaluating the person that runs our city on a daily basis, the city manager. I find it interesting that you have stated on the record that you've run many companies, that you know how businesses work, and yet you are so opposed to having a proper process that most cities that want to operate correctly have a process in place for evaluating a city manager that everyone knows about, that's clear, transparent, that's comprehensive.
First of all, that's a misrepresentation of what I believe.
Paul, how long till Mark's going to get here, sir?
Mayor, I would just state that it is a best practice to have some type of form or guideline or metrics, whatever you want to call it, in terms of evaluating not only the city manager, but all employees.
Right.
And I've never been opposed to that. In fact, I'm filling out this thing right now. So that's a
We have-
misrepresentation, Mrs. McLean, of what I have stated and what I have felt. So I don't know this is a ridiculous thing we're going through, but I'm sitting here while you all have been talking about this. I'm on page 4 of all these various forms, filling them out right now.
This is a form that's going to take at least a week to fill out. You can't fill it out like you can a menu at Chick-fil-A.
We haven't adopted anything. There are 10 or 12 different forms in the white paper that I wanted to go out with the agenda from the National League of Cities. There are 10 or 12 forms, so I don't know which one. I did actually also ask that the form Austin adopted be sent, because it is the very first form in that white paper. But we haven't adopted a process, and we need to. It's the fair thing to do. It's the fair thing for council to know where we stand, and we need to know where the city manager stands, because we are all supposed to be working as a team.
I have no problem if the council wants to adopt a form. Each council's different. If this one wants to do it, fine. Makes no difference to me. I'm just going to continue to fill out all these forms that I've got in front of me right now.
Okay, I believe, did anybody else want to speak on discussion on that item? And also, is the people that are signed up for that, since it's something on the agenda, are they going to get to speak on this? Yes?
Mr. Mayor, I believe the motion on the table is whether or not to reverse the first and second item on the agenda.
That's
So,
correct. But we have people signed up to speak on both of those items, so maybe the public would like to speak on that particular subject.
Mr. Mayor, this is just on the motion to swap the order of things.
That's correct.
So we're not talking about the agenda item here. We're just talking about the motion to move them one for the other. So I guess I call for the vote. Let's make a decision on whether we're going to do this or not.
Thank you, Skip.
you ready?
Did you have something to say?
Oh.
Is there any more discussion on this? He called for the vote.
well, that's not a privileged motion, Mayor. You get to call for the vote whenever you're ready to call for the vote. And if you're ready.
Actually, anyone can call for the vote.
Actually, I'm
according
the
to
one, when he calls for the vote, I have to ask whether or not there's any more discussion on the dais, and then I have to follow through with call for the vote.
I think I've made myself very clear on this item. I do not agree with it.
Ms. McLean, did you want to
No, sir.
expound on this item for a while?
No, sir.
I would just repeat the need to have a matrix before you evaluate someone, again, as a best practice, as a common practice, as something that is often seen when evaluating not only city managers, but all employees inside municipal governments as well as in corporate.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate you. So what we're voting on here to switch this thing is something that our paid attorney has advised us not to do, because we do not have a order in order to evaluate Mr. Rapley in a positive way. So if you would like to vote to go ahead and plow ahead, go ahead. All in favor?
Of what?
Switching 2 to 1.
Of what? What are we voting on?
Switching 2 to 1. You have a motion on the table and you have a second. Our paid attorney has suggested that we don't move forward without an adopted practice. So would you like to continue to move forward? Minnie, would you read it back exactly how it's put there, please?
Winger's motion or city attorney's recommendation?
What's on the table right now is Ms. Winger's motion.
Ms. Winger requested motion to moved to change the order of the agenda items, seconded by Mr. Gregory.
We've had 1 to 2, and we've had advice by our council not to move forward without having a set way of evaluating him. All in favor?
Can I-
Mr.
since we're still in
No,
discussion-
Mr. McCormick, call for the vote.
Okay.
Did you have some more discussion?
Just wanted to ask Mr. Fletcher a question.
Sure.
This is simply about the evaluation process, which one we want to choose. That's all it's about. It's nothing more than that. Is that correct?
The agenda item number 1 is discussion and possible action on the adoption of an evaluation process and an evaluation form for the evaluation of the city manager.
What's the difference between the process and the form?
Part of the process could be completing the form, followed by having a discussion about the findings that each council member makes as part of their evaluation of the form. And you all can have the discretion to set up a process that you'd like to adhere to. Perhaps Councilwoman McLean has a particular process in mind, or others who'd put the matters before the council today. But, for example, complete the form, review the forms by others, discussion, and take possible action, or any derivative of that.
But
It's a question of taking possible action. That's the little stumbling block, because I have just one question to ask. Maybe I can just go over here to the side and ask you this one question. That's all I have that I need to ask you. And I don't know whether we need to move to another room or not, but I just have one question. And it hinges on that last word you said.
Which last word? Process?
Mark will be here in 10 minutes.
we should go into executive.
Question, I can provide an answer. If I feel as though we need to go into closed session to provide you with that answer, I'll recommend that.
Can you give me 3 minutes with Mr. Fletcher?
It's up to you, Mr. Fletcher. Can he
We
break
have
out
to
a
go
council to do
executive
that?
session.
I was referring to asking the question now. If you want to do it in confidence, then we could do it in confidence as a group in closed session.
I'm conflicted because the question I have to offer, I've been told I can't ask in public. Legally, I can't ask you in a public session. I can ask you in an executive session, but I can't ask you in a public session. Legal, regardless of Mr. Rapley can say that's fine with him, but that doesn't make any difference. I've been told the statute is very clear. And I need to get legal advice from our city attorney to see whether if I make a mistake and I'm legally wrong, am I liable for punishment?
That does, from what I've heard thus far, sound like a question that you could ask in closed session under 551071 of the government code.
As I say, it take no more than 1 minute to 90 seconds.
Go in this cafeteria here.
I do not want to be put in legal jeopardy. That's why I want to ask the city attorney whether my question
Oh,
puts
so
me in
make a
legal
motion.
jeopardy.
So make a motion to do
So
that.
we can
You
go into
can't. There's a
closed.
motion on the table with a second that we need to get through, and Mr. McCormick has called for the vote.
What is,
You need to withdraw your motion, withdraw the second. Mr. McCormick needs to withdraw his call, and then you can ask him, I guess.
I think it'd be nice if we
we
kind of
haven't
focused on one
voted
thing
on
at
the
a
order.
time.
Call for the vote. I'm calling for the vote. Nobody voted.
Please, please say again what we're voting on
We're
exactly.
voting on whether or not to change item 2 to item 1. Our paid attorney has advised us that is not the right thing to do, because we should have a way to be able to ask our city manager questions and a set way of doing it. We do not have that. So if you want to go ahead and go beyond that and move it forward, go ahead.
wait a minute, who says we're asking questions? That's not an evaluation. That's not, it's not, we're not talking about
Then vote
asking
yes.
questions.
Vote yes, please, to move forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes for Ms. Winger. Douglas? Roll call vote. Skip, are we moving this forward to get number 2 to 1?
No.
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 Leslie?
I already voted.
Yes, okay. Douglas?
Abstain.
Okay, so we hold right now. 2 to 1 doesn't go, so we go back to the original motion. 3 to 1, excuse me. So we go back to the original motion, which is, I'll read it again. Discuss the possible action on adoption of the evaluation process and the evaluation form for the evaluation of the city manager. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Wait a minute, there was no detail to your motion, so you kind of need to specify what it is your motion is.
My motion would be to discuss and possibly take action on the adoption of an evaluation process and evaluation form for the evaluation of our city manager.
And that's what I just read. That's the way our paid attorney put it on the agenda.
I understand, but that's not an action item. Discussion is just discussion. We don't
It
have to
says
have a motion.
possible action.
Well, it might be possible action, but we haven't had an action motion yet. We just had a motion to discuss.
Right.
And I think we can do that without anything further, can't we?
We were going to do that until Ms. Winger wanted to go into executive session.
Okay. I have an action motion. Is that fair to bring in now?
No, because we have a motion and a second on the table
To discuss?
to discuss whether or not we're going to discuss item 1.
I don't think you need a motion since it's already on the agenda. You just need to move to agenda item 1, and then if you decide to adopt a particular form and/or process, then there could be a motion for a specific form and/or
Okay.
process.
All right, so we've got a motion and we've got a second on the table on business 1 to discuss the possible action on the adoption of the evaluation process and evaluation form for the evaluation of the city manager. We have a motion from Ms.
Discussion.
Okay, right, but we've always gone to find out if we're going to talk about this. But what if they didn't want to talk about it? We've always done that. And then we go into discussion.
Okay, fine, let's vote on it. I call for the vote.
You can't call for the vote. We got to have a second. Do you have,
I had a second, but you don't have to take the call because we would like to have discussion on this issue.
we always do that, so I cannot take the call. People are signed up, there's discussion, there's no call for the vote.
May I lay the item out for the audience, please? I don't think they've had the benefit of looking at the materials that were provided to council a couple of days ago. I've had a big issue since the evaluation was set that we didn't have a form or a process in place. So I set about doing some research because there are several amazing groups around the country, the state, the country, and the world that actually know how cities are supposed to run. And I found a white paper from the National League of Cities that provided a laundry list of different forms for how to evaluate a city manager. Some of them are very complex and some of them are very simple, but most of them focus on the different areas that a city manager is expected to understand and know for a city. Everything from dealing with employees to dealing with citizens to dealing with city council, how to do economic development, their knowledge and their skills as far as just being a city manager, et cetera, et cetera. I did run across the city of Dover, New Hampshire, which actually has an amazing handbook for evaluating their city manager. And what I liked in their particular process.
Would you hold on, Ms. McLean? There seems to be a conference over here. Thank you, Ms. McLean.
This can be very simple. Austin simply, from what it looks like to me, they adopted one of the forms that the National League of Cities had, and it's a really good form. If all we did was adopt that form or something similar, give council a week or two to fill it out, return it to a set person, whether that is the mayor, the city attorney, or someone to compile the answers, and then we came back and actually had an honest discussion on the same page, then that would be great. But really, it involves more than that. And what I found in my research is the purpose of evaluating a city manager doesn't just have to do with evaluating the city manager and the way they perform. It actually has another purpose, and that is actually to see how council is doing and to see if we are actually improving and to see if we are achieving our goals, and to see, are we providing clear direction to our city manager? Are we fulfilling our role as a policy-making body? And are we getting too involved in the day-to-day administration of the city? Those are all things that the evaluation process should be tooled to understand, to vet, and to be a collaborative effort between council and the city manager. This should not be an adversarial process. This should be something that is intended to be good for everyone involved and not put somebody on the spot with no idea of what they're going to be held to. So it's my belief that we really need to have some clear thought in this. And if this year what we have is one form that we adopt, great. But this really is something that council needs to look at and adopt a comprehensive process for the way we evaluate not just the city manager, but something that he could scale down for the other employees of the city, because it only makes us all stronger when we learn where we stand with each other.
Thank you, Ms. McLean. We're still in discussion. Ms. Scott.
Yes, I've thought long and hard on this. I have looked at the white paper here put out by the National League of Cities, and it does talk about all the different aspects of an evaluation of the city manager. And I was thinking long and hard, and our city does like to involve the citizenry as much as possible. And part of the discussion I wanted to bring up is the possibility of having a citizen committee review these white papers and look at the different forms involved in evaluating a city manager. Then, as citizens come back to council and say, we like this particular form of evaluation, or we prefer that particular form of evaluation, because as citizens, we really feel that this is what we need to know about our city manager. So my thought is really a citizen committee should be formed, possibly chaired by a member of council, and look at all the different options of evaluation for a city manager, read them, look them over, study them, select the best one for our city, and who knows our city better than its citizens, and then bring it to council, have it adopted in a place, and then we can go about doing a proper evaluation of a city manager. Because any job I've ever held that I was evaluated, there was a form, I filled it out, my employer filled it out, everyone involved filled it out, and then we came together and reviewed. We are not at that point. But I personally would like to involve the citizens themselves to look over and help decide how we need to evaluate our city manager, because after all, he is running the city for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Mr. McCormick?
Yes, I've had an opportunity to look at the papers put forth by the National League of Cities and some of the other materials that Ms. McLean has put forward. And I myself have included a form here that's only 2 pages long. First of all, I'm opposed to a procedure where we submit our forms to a human resources manager who's employed by or supervised by the city manager. These are personal comments that don't need to go outside of the council. We don't need to have somebody in our staff reviewing them and putting them together for us. If we're going to do that, we should do it ourselves. Lastly, the citizens of the city elected us to do the job for them, not to turn it back to them when it gets a little bit hard and say, you guys do it. We don't really have the cojones to get it done in a timely fashion. So I'm in favor of a form, by all means. I have the pink sheet here, which is 2 pages long and not 7 or 64. And it's a similar form to that used by the military to evaluate officers up to and including the rank of full colonel. And this one's very similar to that, but simply focused on the city manager's job. I think it's up to us to put it together, to decide which one we want to use, and to if we need to go over them, by all means go over them. I think a discussion in public, if that's appropriate, or in private, if that's more reasonable under the circumstances, and then a vote. I don't think the citizens should be put in the position of having to do our job for us. I think we need to do it ourselves. I think we need to get on with it and get it done tonight if we're going to do the review. I think it wouldn't be unreasonable to fill these out and to wait until the next meeting to have the vote on it, simply because that gives us time to consider what we've written, and if we want to have a short time after and circulate our various papers so that we can all look at them before we have a discussion, then that's a reasonable thing to do as well. But going outside the council to have somebody put them together for us, somebody who is in the staff, works for the city manager, and would have those comments at their fingertips, I think is inappropriate. I think it does an injustice to the city manager, and it's just not something the council ought to be doing.
Ms. Winger?
Yeah, it honestly sounds like some people up here are living in a parallel universe. We are judged and evaluated by the public at the ballot box. This is the way governments work in the United States of America, not by anybody else, certainly not by the city manager. Citizens vote for us. If they choose not to, then they don't, and then you have a different council. We just had an election. That's what the election was about. People wanted change. You can't turn it back. You can't decide, oh, now we're going to evaluate ourselves. We don't do that. The public does that, but we are the people who hire the city manager. That's what we're elected to do. We evaluate him, not the citizens. Otherwise, we don't need a council.
Douglas?
I'd like to ask
Douglas?
Mr. Snall a question or two. A few years ago, we had a mayor who, in closed executive session, gave us a prepared form to fill out, an evaluation form. And we did. We then talked among ourselves for about an hour, brought in the then city manager and discussed the form itself. He then asked for it back. He took them all back. What he did with them, I don't know. The question is, can that be done and the forms be destroyed legally? Because I don't think that council members can be brutally open in praise or dissent if we know every single word is going to be on Nextdoor the next afternoon. So is it possible that we can write these things out, put blunt evaluations on here, and then gather them back together again and then destroy them?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Thank you, Mark. Yes?
I think Mr. Gregory had a couple more questions.
Oh,
I had
Mr. Gregory,
at one
I'm
point.
sorry. Did you have another question you wanted to ask or comment?
Well, that was the key question. It's, forms do serve a purpose, but if what you're trying to do is to get together with the existing city manager and let him or her know what he's doing well to keep it going or what he is falling short of and try to improve, sometimes you have to be blunt. And sometimes if you know everything that you're saying in executive session is going to be out on Nextdoor the next day, or everything that you write down is going to be out for public scrutiny, I don't think you're going to get what you're trying to do with an evaluation. You're trying to get an improved city manager and to some degree, a more open communication with the council with the city manager. So do you think that it's conducive to have both?
I think that the city council, like any city, is bound by the Texas laws that apply to government records, and I think those evaluation forms become government records. As to discussions in executive session being spoken about outside the executive session, that is strongly discouraged. The whole point of an executive session is to allow candid discussion of items which may or may not be of sensitive nature. The Open Meetings Act has penalties for certain violations related to executive sessions, like going into an executive session without a proper purpose. And I would hope that all of the members of the City Council and anyone else who is permitted to be in executive session respects the confidentiality and the seriousness of any discussion that's conducted in an executive session, because if the details of those discussions are made public, it is detrimental to the city. I don't think anyone in this room wants to do anything detrimental to the city of Castle Hills. I certainly hope not.
Mark, go ahead, Douglas. Do you have a question?
Whatever the council chooses to do in these various things, I don't believe that the longer the forms are, the better. I think brevity is a very misused or not used much quality. I looked at the questions on these 2 pages. They're very, very succinct questions. I've done this type of form before with one city manager where we have umpteen pages and divide by 5, and if you don't know the answer, it's 0, and it all gets screwed up. That's interesting, but I have to admit, this little questionnaire here gets to the heart of, this is what we think you're doing good. Please continue to do it. This is where you think you have to have improvement. How can you get there? How can we help you get there? That's what this does. And that's what this whole thing is supposed to be doing. Hopefully, we'll have an ordinance next month or the month after that I'll require this every 6 months. But I like brevity, and I like people to be able to write what they think as opposed to just rely on total up the numbers and divide by 5.
Right.
So I agree
Mr. Mayor.
with Mr. McCormick.
Two.
I have a quick question. Since we're asking such simplistic questions about the rules of order, isn't there a course that's supposed to be taken by newly elected council members on whether or not about getting together and talking about camaraderie or whatever you do? Minnie, who has taken that and who hasn't?
Councilmember McGlynn has taken it, Ms. Scott, and we have older open certificates, but I am still trying to locate on Mr. Gregory's and on Ms. Winger.
Okay, I'd like to, since we're asking simplistic questions about rules and how we're supposed to do it, I was just wondering if maybe council ought to, the ones that don't know, should task themselves in order to find out what the law is. Because I do believe it is a statute of the state of Texas, isn't it?
What's the statute?
That you take a course.
Mr. Mayor.
I have another
You didn't take it
question.
this last time?
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yes?
I do have a few more points to make on the item up for discussion.
Okay.
I did not say that we should be evaluating council. What I said is that when you have an effective evaluation process, it can help council examine and improve upon its own process by understanding, or performance, by understanding how we interact with the city manager. I appreciate the effort that Mr. McCormick went into, but the military is a little bit different than the city. And I think that his form is simplistic. The form that I provided to council was the independent one that wasn't 12 or 13 wrapped up in the 60-page document. It was a 7-page form that was adopted by the city of Austin. The first page was really just a simple signature page that explained what the process was for returning the evaluation to whoever it is. Maybe it's our city attorney, maybe it's not one of our employees. I agree that in a small city like ours, maybe a city employee is not the proper person. Maybe it is our city attorney or the mayor. Maybe that's our point of contact for turning in the evaluation. But of the 7 pages, the first page was that signature page. The first page had instructions on the numbers, whether you thought they were excellent, 5 being excellent, 1 being poor, and then had individual categories that are specifically related to what it takes to be a good city manager in a city in the modern age. And it talks about professional skills and relations with elected members of the governing body and policy execution, and those are some things that I think are lacking from the 2-page document. I appreciate the effort, and a lot of the same stuff is included in the 7-page format that the city of Austin has adopted, and I much prefer going with a form that is tailor-made for what a city manager should know.
Can I speak now?
Sure. Hang on. Go ahead.
I would also like to add the City of Austin 7-page form leaves plenty of room towards the end for a narrative evaluation to write in not just numbers of rating 1 to 5, but it has 4 major sections where you can write in your own narrative as an evaluator. So the City of Austin does have a 1 through 5, but it also has plenty of space to fill in yourself of your thoughts and answering the questions. It is set up for a city. I did want to clarify that when I said get the citizens involved, I did not mean have these citizens actually evaluate the city manager, only possibly have a citizen committee to come up with a form for the evaluation, not the actual evaluation itself. Just look at the different city forms available and offer their opinion. So I wanted to clarify that. I did not ask these citizens to be the actual evaluators. That is part of our job. And I did want to ask if Mr. McCormick, are you the one that wrote this evaluation? Okay, I want to clarify who wrote this one, this 2-page evaluation. I have to agree with Ms. McClin. I think if we do choose an evaluation form, it should be one that's already set up specifically for a city, by a city, to evaluate a city manager. I do like the 7-page one that the City of Austin has put together, and it's at the beginning of the white pages that were provided to council.
I have a
Thank you.
Ms.
question.
Winger? Oh,
I'm sorry, go ahead. She's up.
Ms.
Yeah,
Winger?
I don't particularly want to follow the city of Austin for various reasons. I don't have a problem at all if we're going to use a form with the form that, that Mr. McCormick submitted. I don't think that it's necessary to have something any more detailed. It is not, the way he's redone it, it is not a military form, it is simply a good management form, and that would be the one that I would pick.
Douglas?
Well, I ran into this problem when Mr. Vanderwally, who was in the military, and he came up with one of these forms. How do I put a number on several of these things under several of these categories? For example, encourages heads of departments to make decisions within their jurisdictions with minimal city manager involvement, yet maintains general control of operations by providing the right amount of communication to the staff. How do I know that?
Well,
I have no way to understand, I have no way to know that. That's something only the staff and the city manager will know. Another one, sustains or improves staff performance by evaluating the performance of staff members at least annually, setting goals and objectives for them, periodically assessing their progress, and providing appropriate feedback. I don't know if he's done that. I mean, he hadn't even been here a year, so I doubt he's done that. I wouldn't expect him to do it, but how do I know? And I'm supposed to put a number to that, and then divide it by 5 and get an appropriate number for this.
Douglas, that's the problem. Like we put off our streets for 50 years, we put off a way of moving things forward as far as doing a proper evaluation. You're talking to the wrong person when you're talking about corporate etiquette. I was in corporate life for 40 years. I got evaluated all the time. I guess I made it for 40 years for whatever reason. But evaluation is a part, it's a learning process. We have failed to do it. I'll raise my hand, you, me, Leslie, anybody else who's been around here a long time, we have failed to set that up. And for whatever reasons, here we are with, some of us think the city manager walked on water, and some of us don't. And so we're here to evaluate him, and this, I see this thing, and this, putting him in front of us at 7 months when he's just got his feet wet is a witch hunt. But I do understand that, and from what I hear on the street, but I do understand that an evaluation of a city manager or any employee should be a practice. I'll bet you Chief Siemens over there has a system that he uses over in the police department. Dover, I bet you do too, and I bet you could bring out all those forms and show us every evaluation for the past 10 years. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But my gut tells me that I'm right. And we haven't done it at our level?
Well, you're right in the concept.
Shame
You are
on us.
correct, Mr. Mayor. And I just hope that tonight we will come to figure out an evaluation that is reasonable and works.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to clarify that the complaint that Ms. Winger has about the evaluation being from the City of Austin, that's actually the first evaluation included in the white paper. So this is an evaluation that Austin took from the National League of Cities. And it does actually, in one document, it's a very, very small process, and I don't think it's as thorough as it should be. But the very first page of it does set forth the process where you have a deadline for submitting the performance evaluation of 5 business days prior to the city manager's posted evaluation. That the evaluations are summarized. This had human resources, but that's up for debate. Excuse me, Ms. Winger.
I'm listening.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to
Hang
add,
on
I'm
a
not
minute, she's
finished.
talking. There was a consultation going on over there to the right
I'm not consulting with anybody.
anymore. Okay, go ahead.
That its process is very simple, and I think that we need a form for now, but we really need to look at a more thorough process for the future. But this evaluation, was turned in 5 business days prior to the posted evaluation date. They were summarized. This had human resource. That's up for grabs. Make it the city attorney, make it the mayor, whoever, and then provided to mayor and members of council for discussion during an executive session on the date of the evaluation. The city manager would have it. the items in it, while we may not know every single one, it's your subjective idea of, an evaluation of anyone is subjective about what you think they're doing. So you may not know about something, so maybe you just leave it blank, and maybe we have a process for dealing with something that you don't know, rather than giving a 0 because you don't know, maybe you just leave it blank, and you divide by the number of ones that you answered and had personal knowledge of. That's all the part of the process that we can control as council in deciding what is fair for our city.
Thank
Well,
you.
that's what I did with a number in the past. I took the number of things I could answer and divided it by the number that I answered, so.
I'd like to move to accept the form that Mr. McCormick submitted.
We have discussions set up.
Second.
Excuse me?
We just discussed it.
There are citizens to be heard.
Right. There's citizens to be heard, Leslie, on this. Go ahead, Mr.
Question.
McCormick.
Mr. Schnall, did I understand you correctly a moment ago that we complete a form, that it would become part of the public record for that particular employee?
What I said, Mr. McCormick, was that the evaluation form becomes a public record and therefore is subject to the rules for retention of public records.
And subject to the rules for disclosure of public records as well, is that right?
Yes, but that's pursuant to the Public Information Act, which has over 50 separate sections of exceptions to disclosure. Whether this would fall under any of those exceptions is premature to discuss or think about.
I'm not afraid of anything that I would write on an evaluation being seen by anybody sitting out that's a citizen of this city. There is nothing that I would have to write on an evaluation about any employee that I would be embarrassed to say.
It's not myself that I'm worried about being embarrassed.
Yes, sir.
I have a different perspective, and so do you, Mr. Mayor, than all the other members of the council. We've been through countless numbers of these things, of what we think of people, and sometimes we evaluate them, and sometimes we don't. One thing you want to try to keep things on a professional basis, if at all possible. And you want to try to get to the heart of a problem. That's why oral discussion in a closed executive session is far more beneficial, or it can be working in tandem with a written one. Far more better for both council and the city manager to get to the heart of serious problems. It seems to me you can work with both things. But we've gone, when we hire people, my God, we call the city. I was tasked one time to call the mayors of cities of where Dr. Steele was from in Colorado and get all the information I could from him there. And I didn't want to read or even know what a disgruntled city council member may want to say about him, or one who thinks he's just fine as dandy. I didn't want to know that because I thought that wasn't helpful. And that's why I think a written evaluation is fine, but I think you've got to have an oral discussion in private with the city manager to be frank and honest. And I think the two together can really be a benefit. Now, the city council will have to decide what it wants to do. That's what I
Douglas,
think.
there's only one problem with that, and you and I have been around here for 25, 30 years each, I don't know who's counting, is you got the law involved. And you've got an individual there who can decide whether or not he wants to be persecuted in the back room or whether he wants to be persecuted out here in public. We've had a very unusual 5 months in this city that we have never had in the history of this city. You've heard it, I've heard it. Everybody knows what's going on. There's no secrets around here. No. There's no secrets around here. And everybody knows where this is all headed. So for a city manager who we brought in, who you voted for, wants us to hear what we have to say, along with some chosen residents who believe that he's doing a good job or not, he has a right to do that. That's the first problem, is the law. Okay? The second problem is you've got to have an evaluation, a basis to go by. I don't know. I haven't been in the military, but I assume the military has one. I haven't been through the long educational process that Ms. Scott has, getting her degrees and masters or whatever it is. I suspect they have one too. It's called tests. Ms. McLean, even Ms. Winger. Miss Winger too. She had to be evaluated somewhere in her life. You too. You're evaluated by your customer.
Every day.
Okay, me too. But all I'm saying
I'm
is.
not against evaluations. I'm not against evaluation. I'm just saying, I believe that you could put the two together and have and you don't know what I think, Mr. Mayor. Everybody may think they do, but they don't know what I think, because I did vote for Mr. Rapley. And that is something that you all don't know. You think you do, but I think you'd be
Okay, well,
surprised. So
Mr.
I just
Actions
think,
speak
I just think
words.
that we can use more than one tool.
Mr. Mayor, when I talked
you,
about
Douglas.
process, it didn't just mean written, because almost every single city evaluation process that I looked at started with a written process and ended with a verbal meeting, where everyone sat around a table and there were steps. The easiest one that I found was 5 steps in the planning of the evaluation. You agree on the purpose of the evaluation. You agree on what the board expects of the manager. You agree on the frequency and timing of the evaluation. You agree on who will be involved. You agree on the evaluation form to be used. And then you conduct the evaluation. You have individual board members, as council, complete the evaluation form before the session, have the manager do a self-evaluation or self-assessment, agree on a setting for the evaluation discussion, have the manager present during the evaluation, consider using a facilitator to help facilitate discussion so it stays clear and level, allow sufficient time, include a portion during which the board evaluates its own performance, and decide on the next steps and critique the process. I never once said we were just going to do a written evaluation. I had proposed a process, and the process is all-encompassing of written and a meeting so that everyone can discuss the stuff in writing. And I really feel like the first form in the white paper, which is the one that Austin adopted, is a pretty reasonable process, where we have 5 business days before the evaluation date to return the document to whoever, and then we have an agreement about what the form of the evaluation is.
We actually voted to have an evaluation tonight. At no time did you then suggest that you wanted to do this instead, which you could have done at that time. So this is not a time to be doing this. But if we're going to be voting on a form, I've already made my motion. I would like to vote on the form that Mr. McCormick submitted.
Second. Second.
Well, she can't make that motion. Well, I guess she can, but we're still in discussion, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people to sign up. Paul, they want to add a motion to the, is that an amendment? Is that what that is, to the motion on the second one we're looking at? Okay. Is that, okay. So the amendment, do we go ahead and go with the citizens, or do we wait to decide on the form until afterwards?
What are the citizens going to talk about? They're not voting on this.
Leslie, I'm not sure, but I think that falls within the guidelines of the law, because it is on the agenda and it is an action item. I'm not sure.
I thought he said you were talking on the other one.
Well, you can argue with the Attorney General. Go ahead.
So, Mayor, are you talking about citizens who have signed up to speak on
Item
1 under new business?
That's correct.
Okay.
Can she make a motion to go ahead with a form before the citizens had the right to talk, sir?
Yes, she
Okay.
certainly can, and Mr. McCormick has the right to second it.
Yes,
But
sir.
I would suggest at this point, since you have a motion, the citizens have heard a pretty long discussion, that it would be appropriate to let the citizens who have taken the time to be here and signed up to speak
Thank you.
in order of sign-up, and then have the council take appropriate further discussion or appropriate action once the citizens have been heard.
Thank you, Mark. So Ms. Winger has a motion on the table to accept Mr. Cormick's form. Mr. McCormick seconded it. Roll call vote,
Discussion?
please. Okay, go
Mayor,
ahead.
there's no discussion, there's no vote at this time. If you want to have the citizens to have an opportunity to speak on the subject of item number 1 under new business, this is the time to invite citizens to speak. once the council votes, it's a little late for a citizen to bring something to your all's attention.
I thought we were voting to, okay. This has been a very unusual night. I thought we were voting to allow this one to go forward as far as the one we were going to use. Okay, citizens, Robbie Casey.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. My name is Robbie Casey, 144 Cass Hills Drive. I have to say I'm totally disappointed in the way this meeting has gone. And first of all, I think if there's any evaluation that needs to be done, it should be done with the council, of the council. And I think before we go forward with any other evaluation, the council should be evaluated first. We all know that it's a one-sided council up there. It's always a 3-to-1 because but you ran as a team.
No, we did not.
Yes, you did. You ran as a team, and you meet as a team, and you vote as a team. So when you have 5 members of a council there, and you've got 3 that have colluded and vote and work together as a team, we don't have a chance. We have to have a new charter, a new way of running our city.
This is not about.
I mean, it's totally ridiculous.
She's
You-
talking on the
You just
item.
make it like make us a laughing stock of San Antonio because you get up there and you're halfway awake and you mumble around and you go to try to talk to each other.
Point of order,
I
Mayor.
just-
Robbie,
This is out
go
of
ahead, let's
order.
stick to the point on this. Thank you.
Pardon?
Let's stick to the point on the item that we're talking about.
Well.
Thank you.
The point is, we want to get a form. We want to have a form that we go by.
We just took-
I totally agree, and I agree with Ms. McLean, that that's the form that we should use. It's something that she has researched, not something that she's made up. And I think that same form, the citizens should have an opportunity to use on the council before any more evaluations are done.
Thank you, Ms. Casey. Mr. Kinney?
Good evening, John Kenny, 103 Briarcliff. I just have a few points. I understand the logic behind having an evaluation process committee. I have sat on too many committees. Mark and I sat on the ordinance review committee. Robbie sat on the strategic or the master plan committee, and nothing is ever done of that. We never hear anything. So if you move forward with a committee, I ask that you do something and tell us all what the results are. Otherwise, give up on making committees from citizens, because I'm tired of giving my time and it not going anywhere. The process, I haven't had the chance to see what form Mr. McCormick put together, but I was a veteran. I'm 20 years in the Air Force, and yeah, we had forms. And they weren't numbered forms. Actually, they were numbered forms when I started in the Air Force. When I retired, it was a sliding scale from meet standards to does not meet standards. So you don't have to put a number and then divide it. Matter of fact, the enlisted process changed twice while I was in the Air Force, because when I came in, everybody was given a number score. The best got 10s. Well, guess what? Everybody in the Air Force got 10s. Okay. So the Air Force changed the process and said, you know what, we're only going to give you a 5 as a max. That didn't solve the problem, because then everybody got 5s. So that's why the Air Force went to this sliding scale of meet standards and does not meet standards, and that's what they're using today. I haven't had the chance to see the form. I respect Mr. McCormick's time in the military, in the Air Force, but I don't think you should use an outdated form for today's day. It's not fair to any city manager to be evaluated on the same day the evaluation criteria is created. That's just ludicrous. How can you evaluate Ryan when he doesn't know what your expectations are? That's simply wrong. You guys have spent over an hour debating the process and a form. I can't even imagine what the forms would look like at the end of the time you have to fill them out. Stop, don't be the same as previous councils. Stop the revolving door on this office. Every year, we have a new city manager and an interim. And we had Ryan for 7 months. And if you evaluate him tonight based on criteria you make up tonight, what has he done for 7 months? So stop being like previous councils. Work together. I stand by Mr. Rapley and what he's done in the last 7 months. If you need to create a form and a process, do it. But you're going to spend 6 hours like you do every time you guys come in here just creating that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Next on the list, we have Ms. Ginger Majors.
Ginger Majors, 509 Gladiola. I feel just the way that guy just said. I am totally behind Mr. Rapley. He's been, every time I've come up here and needed something answered or needed a problem solved, he was right there to do it. He's made me feel very welcome. I have a sense of well-being in Castle Hills. What I don't like about tonight is that I haven't seen that evaluation form. Y'all haven't come together before this evening to vote on some kind of form for this man, and I don't think it's right at all. This whole thing, all of it on one evening is just, I don't even know anybody that does that. I was a teacher, my gosh, we knew what we were going to be evaluated on. So that's it.
Thank you, Ginger. Okay. Quentin Baker.
Quentin Baker, 304 Foxhall Lane. I'm not even quite sure where to start. This is really appalling, okay? This whole agenda should not have taken place. First off, the whole performance review process, the lack of in the form, is city council's problem. That's city council's failure. That's a governance failure in our city that should never take place. Okay? You own that problem. Okay? So at this point, it is on you to create the process and the evaluation form. As our governance for our city, you own that, not the citizens. You do. You're the elected officials. Okay? The burden is on you to create the process, a fair process, an objective process, a transparent process to go forward. You're not ready to do that tonight. That's abundantly obvious. Okay? You're in no position to vote on it. You have no process, no form. You're just plain not ready. I have to ask you to table this because you're not in the position to do this. And I have to say, this burden's on you. Okay? You're accountable to get this right. Now, in fairness to our city manager, he can't be judged tonight. He can't be evaluated because there has been no performance criteria put out. There's been no expectations laid out. There's been no goals set. There have been no metrics set. You cannot fairly judge him. So until you get a process in place and communicate that to him and give him the opportunity to meet up, then you're doing an injustice to him. And I have to ask you to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Quentin. That's it on the people who are signed up for agenda items. So I guess we have a motion on the table by Ms. Winger to go with Mr. McCormick's form, and we have a seconded by Mr. McCormick to use Mr. McCormick's form. Roll call vote. Sure?
May I say something?
Of course.
Well, I've
Douglas
taken-
is
I've taken
recognized
the
by
time,
the chair.
sir.
Douglas is recognized by the chair.
Thank you. I've been trying to go through the three things that have been provided to us since I've been here. I like Mr. McCormick's. I actually like the city of Austin, and you don't hear me say that too often. It's reasonable, and it does identify a few things of 4 questions that can provide long answers. I'm in I think the 10 or 15th or 20th page of all this that I've been going through on this, whatever this thing is. To me, this is just pure bureaucracy personified. I don't think we need 20, 30, 40, 50 pages on an evaluation in a small town like this. I really don't. Seems like if Austin can condense it to 7 pages, we certainly don't need 30. You know, Mr. Baker's right in this respect. We went through this problem, I can remember it, quite a few years ago. We stood up here with a chalkboard and wrote down the same thing he said we've been deficient on. We acknowledged we were deficient then, and this was a totally different council. And we wrote all the things down, and we acknowledged we should do it, and then the next council came in, and they didn't know what the last council did, and it gets passed on. This is something I do hope we get together and have an ordinance that prescribes a way to do these things. I think tonight, I'm happy with either Austin's or Mr. McCormick's. I think they both get to the heart of what we want to do. I think the effect will be clear to Mr. Rapley what is expected of him. And you know, when somebody applies to work here, he goes through an interview in a closed session. And in a closed session, the council people are very clear in what they make of what they're looking for from a city manager, what they expect of a city manager, and a whole slew of things. So it's not he's coming in here blindly, having not a clue of what the council wants. A good professional city manager will know by the people who are hiring him what they want. And I did believe that Mr. Rapley, I voted for Mr. Rapley, and I was very optimistic with Mr. Rapley. And I think this evaluation is a must. I'm happy with either Austin's or Mr. McCormick's. Either one is fine with me. I'm opposed to this thing that I've been laboring through for an hour. So anyway, let's get on with it and do something productive.
Comments on the
No,
discussion?
I'd like to call for the vote.
Ms. McLean, did you have any comments before we go into the vote?
Yes, the white paper, Mr. Gregory, I will admit, some of those evaluations were horrendous, and they were like the epitome of bureaucracy. But it was 13 or so evaluations from different cities around the country, and some of them were tragic. I think that Austin's is the best representation that's really easy on the eyes with not many words on a page, and so there's a lot of room for being able to fill out things and actually understand what you're talking about. And it really is my preference because it is tailored for a city, and I appreciate Mr. McCormick's effort that was put into it, but almost all of those things are found in one of the little laundry list of things that are checked off on the City of Austin's, where you have a line that talks about knowledge or leadership or management, rather than having all of those performance factors in one question. It's really hard to compare what each one of us thinks on an issue when you've got so many very important things lumped into one category. And so in that respect, Austin breaks it down, and it would be easy to see if one of us felt that he carries out directives of the body as a whole as opposed to those of any one member or minority group. We could tell where we all stand on a specific issue, whether that's going to be very, very difficult with the form that Mr. McCormick has put forward. And I think it will be easier for us to understand how we are working with Mr. Rapley if we're effectively working with him and working with him for the betterment of the city with the form from Austin.
Thank you, Ms. McCormick. Ms. Scott?
Thank you.
You called for the vote, but you also had a discussion, and I'm going to allow discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. And I do appreciate Mr. McCormick putting together and writing a form. I myself feel more comfortable with a form, and yes, it was adopted by Austin, but the National League of Cities does promote it as a solid metric for evaluation. It's 7 pages. It does have a metric scale. It does have a chance to write in. So instead of going with a form written by someone on council, I really feel that it would be more prudent to go with something promoted by the National League of Cities that has been vetted. It's gone through various processes and is given by them as one of their examples as an excellent form of evaluation. So I like it at 7 pages. The city of Austin just happens to use it. I'm sure other cities do as well. But no offense to Mr. McCormick, thank you for putting together your evaluation. I just feel we should go with something that's promoted by the National League of Cities rather than something that's self-written by council itself. Thank you.
Mr. McCormick?
Well, I'd say that, first of all, it wasn't written by me personally. It was abstracted from the officer evaluation form used by all the services for all officers up to the grade of full colonel. And many of those actually manage city installations size a good deal larger than ours, or even some of the bases around here. So I think it's an adequate form. It's fairly simple, and don't think it's too hard to use. And I don't think that there's anything in there that is not contained in the Austin form. I think probably I had the opportunity to look at both of these submissions by Ms. McLean, both of the applications that, or the evaluation forms that she submitted, including the long one, and I found that all of that was covered in the 2 pages that I provided. So I'm still in favor of the 2-page form. I think there's still a procedure to be established once we pick a form, but I think it's time we got on and made some move to pick a form.
Thank you, Mr. McCormick. Okay, Ms. Winger has called for the vote. And so with that said,
May I make one last comment?
make it quick.
On Mr. McCormick's form, there is no discussion regarding finances, regarding specific financial management, and with a city, when the city manager is in charge of providing a balanced budget to council, I think that is a major factor that is missing from the 2-page form, and I think that kind of tips the scale towards the other form that is tailored towards city use.
Okay, that's it. Ms. Winger has called for the vote, so we're voting on the fact whether or not we're going to use Mr. McCormick's form, which we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, we're using the form. All right.
I have another motion.
Yes, sir.
To establish a procedure whereby we accomplish this evaluation. Since we're picking the form tonight, I move that we table the evaluation of Mr. Rapley until the November council meeting, that we disseminate this form to Mr. Rapley, let him know what we're going to be doing in November. I think at this point tonight, I don't think we're going to accomplish anything more useful. So I'd like to move, to make that motion, and I guess it's time to see if anybody seconds it.
Second.
Mark, should we just go ahead and table the item till the next meeting, or go into it and then have the motion gone through as an amendment?
The motion's premature until you close item 1 and open item 2, and
Okay.
as soon as you open item number 2, Mr. McCormick can make his motion.
Thank you. Hold on to that, please, okay? All right, we're closing item 1, and we're using Mr. McCormick's form. Now we're going on to item 2, which is deliberation on the employment,
He said he wanted to take
evaluation,
I view that.
reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal
No, I think
of the
it's
city manager, possible executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551-074, personal matters. Mr. McCormick, do you want to read your motion? We do have people signed up for this. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we table the evaluation of Mr. Rapley to the November council meeting so that we'll have time for the councilmen to complete the form that we've now selected for use, and we'll be able to provide Mr. Rapley an opportunity to review the form and make whatever changes he may need to make between now and November, and we make the evaluation for the November meeting.
Thank you, Mr. McCormick. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, we have a second discussion.
No, there's no discussion on a motion to table.
Thank you, Leslie, for letting me know that. All in favor? Okay. Citizens who were signed up, I apologize. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I guess you can come back on November.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Mayor,
if it's okay, I think it would be appropriate for those citizens to make their comments now, if it's okay with the council, because we have an opportunity to hear those comments now before we go ahead with our evaluation.
Mark, hold on. Mark?
If citizens have signed up and wish to be heard, they can be heard, but the council has acted on this item for this evening.
Okay. Citizens, it's been acted on to go to the next meeting, but if you are signed up, we'll allow you to speak on this item. And we have Robbie Casey signed up, we have John Kinney signed up, Ginger, Quentin, I'm not sure, where'd he go? Okay, thank you, Quentin, and Frank Paul. So if any one of you would like to speak tonight on anything you had to say regarding this, just let me know and I'll call you up. Robbie Casey? Yes, ma'am?
Robbie Casey, 144 Cass Hills Drive. I just want to say that we should all be very proud that we have Mr. Rapley here at Castle Hills. I think that from what I've seen on the budget and what he's done an excellent job. And I think that he could work very well with the police and the fire department and all of the employees. He's a professional, he's experienced, and he's really what we need, and we need to work with him. And if we have any objections or if there's something that we want him to do, discuss it with him and be nice about it. And let's give him our support. We need him. Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie. I think John already left. Ginger, you're on here. Did you want to speak tonight? Frank? Oh.
Ginger Majors, 509 Gladiola. I have a sense of well-being living in Castle Hills because of the excellent services provided by our city employees, all of them. We finally have an expert city manager who is well-liked by the employees that he manages and by the citizens that he serves. The friendly climate he has created in City Hall is a breath of fresh air we have not had in years. He is effective in the management of our city and follows up with citizen concerns like he has with mine. He is well connected with and familiar with other city managers, powers that be in San Antonio and Bexar County, which is all important in solving our flood and drainage issues. This is one city manager that has an open door to all citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Majors. Okay, then we also have, let's see, John, did he come back in? No. Mr. Paul, did you want to speak tonight? Or you want to pass? Excuse me? Okay. Non-agenda. Well, we're down to the non-agendas. Mr. Paul, we're on the non-agendas, sir.
Mr. Mayor, if you'll close item number 2.
Yes, sir. We will close item number 2 and move on to non-agenda items for citizens to be heard. Thank you, Mark. It's all yours, Frank.
Frank Paul, 112 Shalimar. Is that working okay?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
I want to talk about the budget meeting of September 18th. It was disappointing at best. Now, y'all have the keys to the kingdom. You can spend it, pull it back, do whatever you want in that regard, how much you want to spend. I'm not arguing that. I am arguing about the sour process that went on. It was ridiculous. These three here were going back and forth with their agenda items, which they have the right to do, but it seems to me like it was pretty well staged. In fact, Ms. Winger, as you remember, reached over to Mr. McCormick and asked him, are you going to make the next agenda item, the next motion? I mean, and it looked like they were obviously colluding, and that's already been brought forth. Now, that being said, Mr. Gregory, the only thing he could say was, well, the previous council did that. He didn't deny it. But I need to remind Mr. Gregory that the previous council did nothing like that, and I'll give you an example. In your campaigning, you were telling everybody how you didn't vote for the increase in the retirement program. You didn't. You fought not to have it. I agree. But you forgot to say, well, you know, Mr. Trevina and myself, we were the same way. Did we collude? There were 3 of us. Of course not. We didn't even discuss it. So this is like the Keystone Cops up here, in my opinion. And it just needs to stop. I'm going to go briefly to the permit clerk again. I need to do that. You got rid of the permit clerk. Every one of you up there asked the city manager more than once, well, what does this person do? What is their function? What this? More than once he told you he provided you with the material earlier that day on every one of the employees. So either you don't read, you don't care, or you're just trying to make him look bad. And it's pretty stupid and it's pretty obvious. And there's obviously an agenda here. Let's go to the permit clerk. Just a couple of last quick things. The permit clerk was brought, true, part-time before the hail. It was made full-time October of 16 after the hail, and it was unanimous, and Mr. Gregory voted for it. So surely you knew what the process was and what her function was, and you thought it was appropriate. Our previous city manager thought it was. I agree with her. We voted on it, and she brought her in. Let's take the finance clerk. The reason the finance clerk was brought in is because our then treasurer, city finance officer, and the city manager decided she needed help. Well, here we're talking last week about, oh, they don't need any help. They don't need this. They don't need that. But then the previous administration back then thought they needed help, so they hired her. She came on part-time. She went full-time when our finance officer resigned last year. So, you know, let's quit playing the games. Get down to some serious business and quit trying to scorch the earth on this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item because everybody's spoken that was signed up, and it is announcements by mayor and council members. Hang on. Okay. Mr. McCormick, did you have any comments for this evening?
Well, I do have some things that I'd like to say.
This is the time, Mr.
But
McCormick.
I know they're not going to be well received, so I think I'm going to pass on them.
Thank you, Mr. McCormick. Ms. Scott, is there anything you would like to talk about, please?
I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out for National Night Out on Tuesday night. I want to say I enjoyed meeting people that I hadn't met before, as well as seeing friendly faces at all of the different parties. I was so sorry I was only able to get to 9 of our 16 events that evening, but thank everyone who participated. And like I said, my door is always open. You can always contact me. My information is available on the city website, and I'm here to work for you. So if there's anything I can help you with, let me know. But I did enjoy meeting everyone that I met and seeing everyone I saw. So thank you for coming out for National Night Out. And for everyone here tonight, thank you for coming out and being part of the city process. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Ms. McLean, did you have anything to offer?
Yes, Mayor. I'd also like to thank all the residents that hosted block parties and all the residents in the areas that attended those block parties. According to Lieutenant Wagner, we had 268 guests that visited our 16 parties, which I think the numbers are amazing. I too, with City Manager Rapley and Captain Zuniga, we only made it to 9, almost 10 parties, but one had closed up. And I wish I'd made it to more, but it was nice to meet new people, see people that I hadn't seen in a while, and just see the citizens interacting in such a fabulous way with each other and getting to know their neighbors. Also, thank you for coming tonight and being a part of the process. This is your city, so please contact me if you have any questions or concerns.
Ms. Winger, did you have anything to add?
I already thanked all of the people on National Night Out.
Thank you, Ms. Winger. Mr. Gregory, did you have anything to comment on tonight?
So I want to let you know there is one person in the city who we helped celebrate her 100th birthday almost 4 years ago. She's next month will be 104, Evelyn Moore. I say it now because November, everybody's busy with Thanksgiving and everything. She lives on Caladium. It might be fun just to stop by and wish her an early happy birthday. 104 years old.
Can't imagine. Thank you, Douglas. I wanted to first apologize to the 15 other people who had blocks parties who I didn't get to go by because I had one myself. But it wouldn't be fair to not say that next year, if I'm still here, meaning literally here, not here, but literally here, right. I'm going to have another one and give away the Yetis, which I gave away at my block party. Everyone got one. We had a drawing for a gas grill, which everyone that came will get a chance to win. And we also, the neat thing about it was we got together on an economic development type thing and brought in 4 of our major restaurants in town who came out along with several of our 3 of our businesses. So it was a big success. Thank you, Skip, for coming by. Thank everyone who did. Douglas, Leslie, I thank you for thinking about it. And Miss McLean, we're still counting the wine bottles. Miss Scott, I guess you were sick. But anyway, I want to thank everybody. This is a big deal for me, as you know, and next year it's going to be bigger and better. And other than that, I think we'll end with our traditional.
Motion adjourned.
Second. All in favor? Thank you for being here this evening, folks.